It is almost the perfect amount of power.
The problem was, we drove the McLaren and the Ferrari yesterday, and I'm like,
I remember, this is like a brand new car, and now it's like a fifth of the money.
Must have shifter. Today, I want to talk with Ed because he is the king of depreciated supercars, and I am a cheap man.
I'm sure it's true. Yeah. You've got cheap examples of really cool cars, but
right.
You said you wanted to step your game up.
Well, here's the thing. In starting to become an automotive YouTuber, you get to a stage where you're like, hey, I can do more of the crazy things I like. And then it becomes, you justify your absurdity.
Absolutely, yes, that's what all this is for, but I have to have a bunch of them because usually they're broken.
Yeah, and see, I started justifying my absurdity, and the next thing you know, I had loads of projects.
Yes.
And the loads of projects I have now are some longer term ones, which I am going to keep and finish. There's a but. I need things I can drive and have fun with that don't require too much, that I can keep doing the big projects, but then have the adventures.
Absolutely. Yeah, so what do you want to spend?
Okay, so I'm thinking that I'm not too far away, that if I got rid of some of my smaller, goofy vehicles and maybe some car I don't need, I'm starting to get into the realm of thinking of maybe that's like 60 to 120 kind of, that's a big range.
Well,
but you know, you gotta plan ahead.
Sure, and as these things depreciate and as they continue to build a whole lot of new great cars, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you've got R8s, you've got several different Ferraris, you've got Gallardos.
True.
Can't do a Mercy anymore. 5 years ago, you probably could have gotten an early car there, but now it's twice that. Some great AMG cars, some Porsches that I wouldn't buy. I mean, there's a lot of really good cars, but I think it's got to be Italian. I mean, obviously, for the sake of YouTube,
I do like Italian cars.
You do see, you know, better SEO for Italian cars. Sure. I got a garage full of them, and honestly, I think the 599 is probably the strongest choice.
Yes, and I drove that yesterday, and we drove the SLR McLaren, which was amazing. And the funny thing was, I drove SLR McLaren, then 599. And the result was not what I expected, nor somewhere in my psyche that I wanted, because I actually like the 599 more.
Sure.
Made me feel like a kid again.
And I don't disagree with that. The SLR is brilliant for what it is, but as a driver's car, it has some issues, and the 599 is just brilliant. And so it's not quite as athletic from a handling perspective as the Scud is, or as a 430 could be made to be. The stock 430 is a little bit soft. But, you know, in that range, I think those are the three cars you really want to look at. Do you want a 430, do you want a Gallardo, or do you want a 599?
You're pretty much right on the money. And initially I was thinking maybe I can find like an early R8 stick, but it doesn't feel, I sound like it's not, it doesn't feel exotic enough.
Well, it's a gorgeous car, it's iconic, but they have made them for now almost 14 years. And it's to a point where they're not quite as exciting. Whereas
I need a little more masochism for the sake of exotic art.
Well, let me show you the Gallardo.
Yes, masochism. Whoa, wait a minute. I think I should not have used the word, I like masochism from like the world's best car salesman before. What? Wait a minute, I've seen this thing on your channel. Isn't this thing an unmitigated disaster?
It was when I got it. So this car was in a flood, so was the 599. But at the same time, it's all behind it now. And
is it?
It's a true manual car.
Meaning all the problems are back here?
Well, to some extent,
okay.
Yes. It has some secondary EVAPS issues. The check engine lights are obviously on. But overall, apart from a fuel gauge that lies to you and tells you that it has twice as much gas as you really do, it's really great. And I love how analog it is. The clickety-click of a gated shifter is terrific.
See, the problem was, we drove the McLaren and the Ferrari yesterday, and I'm like, the pedals are not so bad. But then I get in this, and my immediate mechanic self is like, must have shifter.
Sure, and you can still do that. In terms of a gated car, this is about as good as it gets. Now you could do an R8 for a little bit less money, but it won't cost you any more to own the Gallardo.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem, Matt, and I'm going to give you crap. I think you may have been responsible for the prices of gated shifters going up a little bit.
Well, you got to look out for number one. Now, the 430 is also terrific. You will end up with a paddle shifted car in that budgetary range, but it does also give you the chance to get a convertible, whereas if you wanted a convertible Scud, or which would be a 16M, that's going to be a little bit beyond the budget.
That is true. I do like spiders and convertibles for the sake of, I like the wind, I like a little bit of grit, and I like to hear the exhaust even more.
Totally, yeah. Honestly, I was never a convertible guy at all, but I've enjoyed having that car as a convertible quite a bit. I looked at some 430 Spiders, but to me the Scud was really kind of the ultimate. And when I bought it with just the Mercy as another car. And the combination of those two cars does everything perfectly.
Right.
You've got big and crazy, but you've also got tactile and capable.
Is that kind of annoying to you because you want to have other cars, but then you come back realizing I kind of have the two that suit me well?
For sure, and there's always going to be a little bit of a revolving door. These two mean a lot to me because the Car Trek project has meant a lot to me.
It's been a great series.
And it's just the chance to go play Top Gear, and the fact that through YouTube and through the connections and friendships and sponsors we were able to make that possible, that means an awful lot. And the SLR, like, you're always gonna dream. It doesn't matter if you own your dream car. You're still gonna dream.
Yeah.
And that was one of those cars that was so iconic and so significant that I always wanted to try it out. And I've enjoyed it. I think it's a great thing that I don't have any other cars like it because they never made any cars like it.
Sure.
But at the same time, if you were just gonna have one car out of everything that I have,
yeah, the 599. And I mentioned this to you in a video the other day relating to this. The reason I became so staunchly hatred against paddle shifters is because I used to work as a part-time Ferrari mechanic when the only paddle shifters were basically the 355 F1 box.
yes.
And they sucked.
They did. Now, they did for several reasons. They were plagued by the standard 355 time bomb issues, but also that was a very rudimentary F1 system. It didn't have throttle by wire. It was retarding spark timing in order to allow you to shift. It didn't blip the throttle automatically on a downshift, as I recall. It's been forever.
That would make sense. I'm trying to think how it did it.
I think you had to, I think it just slipped the clutch.
Yeah.
No
wonder I hated it.
Yeah, and for that, I could be wrong. I tried to buy one for the latest Car Trek series that we were doing, Ferraris for the price of a Camry, and really I wanted to prove that Ferraris for the price of a Camry aren't what they're cracked up to be. You used to be able to buy a decent Ferrari, a functional 308 or a 348 or even a terrible 360 in the 40s, but they've all gone crazy lately, as most cars have. But I did that instead by saying, look, you're going to have to spend 80 to 100 grand in order to get the car that you really want to own.
Yeah.
But you should, because it's still worth it. They are still value stable. There are great ways to finance them through companies like Premier Financial.
No,
and you end up with a reasonable payment for an exceptional car. I mean, this car I paid 40 grand for, it was really 80 grand. And honestly, it was $560,000 to the second owner with a premium over MSRP.
See, that's incredible.
2007.
Yeah, and I giggle because on Car Trek, your premise was to get one for the price of a Toyota Camry.
Correct, but you know, Tyler bought a 456, Freddie bought a 308. Those are kind of for the price of a Camry.
Yes.
Tyler spent a little bit, but regardless, I don't think if we had just made a series with those cars in a Mondial cab that people were going to be dreaming about experiencing the outcome. So we needed a 430 or we needed something like this, a 599 FF with some cheaty prints.
You are beautifully justifying your creative ability to make this be qualified for the price. We should do this. So I hated 355 gearboxes back then, and I sort of, as a young driver wannabe, you know, toe hill downshifting guy that loves that, I just shut off the paddle shifting because to me it was an assault to everything I loved about driving and felt like the biggest sellout in the world to a car company. And I've just stuck with that. However, times have changed.
Yes.
And I am now realizing that I got over my youthful, you know, what do you call it, crusade, that there's still good cars out there, and I had a heck of a lot of fun driving this. You could daily drive it, and it makes beautiful noises, and I think you should pop the engine because it's pretty spectacular.
Yes.
Resistant.
So this is the 6-liter V12 from an Enzo. They limit it to 8,400 RPM, which limits it to 617 or 612 horsepower. The SLR is 617, rather than the Enzo's 660. But it is It is almost the perfect amount of power. The F12, which followed it, and the A12 have been criticized as being almost overly powerful for road-going cars.
Okay.
But this is a car where you can actually use full throttle, and you're going to get up to the speed limit or beyond it very, very quickly. But it's not wildly irresponsible to do so.
Well, and I mentioned to you the reason I like my Dodge Viper, the '90s coupe, the blue light stripes one, so hard for so long, is because it just felt right. It did everything I wanted to. And then when we drove this and we're just kind of bopping through traffic quickly, I got excited and go, oh, this feels like a more sophisticated my Viper.
Yes.
So it suits an aspirational aspect in life where I'm at, because we all want to work hard to move forward and go on in life. And that doesn't mean that we don't like other things or won't have other ridiculous projects and junkyard trips, but you want to aspire to something.
And that's it. And when we did the What Would You Buy series,
yes,
to me, my favorite price point that we did was 150 grand. Because with the ways that you can finance cars and the fact that a highly optioned F-150 or Suburban is touching $100,000 now.
Which is insane to me.
It is. 150 is a reasonable dream budget, as is 100 grand. And there's a lot of great options there. And in that video, it was almost all GT3 or Scud. And everybody was choosing those options because, I paid 140 grand for my Scud. It's probably gone up a little bit since then. It's got almost 40,000 miles on it now. But at the same time, if you were only gonna own one car, I can see the argument for the GT3. But if you're gonna have another car, particularly if it happens to be a manual car, then the F1 Scud is exceptional. And the fact that you're always going to own your blue with white stripes Viper, which is a great stick car that you can do anything in.
I can go be rough and tumble and rumble and...
That means that having a second F1, more modern, more usable, more comfortable car makes all the sense in the world.
And the other thing too is I'm going to have my King Zero finished, so I'll have my avant-garde silly mid-engine V12, so I kind of take care of the mid-engine a little bit. And the Jabberwock, which is just my insane fever dreams on, did somebody make me drink absinthe? I put a Dodge Viper engine in an 80s prototype. So maybe I don't need to scratch the mid-engine itch with an everyday car.
Totally, and obviously you are a fan of the Batmobile, and these are Batmobile style cars. They are big, long hood, and it looks huge, but it drives small.
Well, now that's the thing that was so interesting. We talked about this, but when I drove it, it didn't feel the way it looked.
No.
Like, it looks beautiful, but this car, when you look at it, it looks enormous.
Yes.
You're thinking, what's this gonna be? But when I drove it, it felt like a car I'd already been driving for 10 years because it was intuitive, it was small, I could place it anywhere I want, and it was like light on its toes and light on its fingertips, so you could just go.
I mean, I did about 3,700 miles on it during the Car Trek filming. We went from here to Dallas to Gateway, Colorado and back. And I mean, it is plagued with issues due to the flood, I'll be honest with you, but none of them are all that consequential. It's a great car, it drives beautifully, and it is something that can just consume a continent in one sitting, and that's not necessarily something I would say about any of the other cars in here. The Mercy at the moment is off getting ready for Car Trek 5. We're going to shoot that in a couple of weeks.
Oh, you're going to do it with your own cars?
We are. We're going to do a Dream Car series.
Nice.
And so Autotip has told us to take all of the Dream cars to Amelia Island, where we'll all be judging a class, and then we're going to
in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Oh, cool. I'll be there too. That'll be fun.
Fantastic.
And the other thing too is so many of my viewers know I've done lots of projects. 944s, because I still think it's the best car for the price range. Everything from MR2s, 928s, motorcycles and such. I'm still always going to be that guy and have those cars. I probably will still daily my 944 forever, but at the same time too, just because we like things of a place or you're not afraid to get dirty and build stuff doesn't mean that you shouldn't also aspire for other things and that other dreams are okay. It doesn't change nature. I'm just trying to get people to say, sometimes it's okay to dream. Sometimes it's okay to have something that is more wild and sophisticated if you can.
Totally, and as you think about what your dream car is, the great thing is when it's not a car that's becoming more unattainable. And right now, if your dream car is a 430 or 599, they're not going up in value all that much. They're pretty stable. They're also not going down. And so as you're building your credit, as you're saving money, as you're making long-term decisions rather than short-term gratification plays, it just puts you closer and closer. And honestly, it can happen a whole lot sooner than most people think. And that's why understanding how financing works, understanding what the real liabilities are with respect to owning the cars, and then keeping your eye on the prize and not getting distracted by, ooh, look at that little car that's less than what I really want.
Well, one thing for me is I've been fortunate enough to have so many of my dream cars in the past. You know, even like the Countach and stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And you know, things change, the finances, the market change, and you move on. You have other dreams. So what's kind of interesting for me now, when we're talking about cars like this, or the Scud, or the Gallardo, those weren't actually the cars that when I was younger I dreamed of. They weren't my poster cars, so to speak. They were the ones that were new and amazing when I was, you know, becoming an adult, being out there having fun.
Yes.
And then I got so busy with my own life, working and building and doing Genius Garage and stuff, that I just stopped paying attention to new cars.
Sure.
Which is kind of like the car guy equivalent of, I've been in a coma for 15 years. And now that I'm sort of back and being like, okay, let's play, I'm like, I remember, this is like a brand new car. And now it's like a fifth of the money. Yes.
That's right.
So it's like going new car shopping just with more bucks.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you spend less money, you get a cooler car, and you have an awful lot of fun. And it works when you try to start it.
Definitely. Well, hopefully. And put a battery tender on it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I got a little time to figure it out, but obviously going to keep doing the builds and having all the fun. But I want something aspirational. I got a little bit of time to think of it, and I'm sure you will be a great facilitator for me making even more ridiculous decisions.
That's it. It sounds like it's yard sale time at Genius Garage.
Well, not Genius Garage, but definitely at the Casey's Garage. Thanks, Ed.
Absolutely.
See you guys next time. Car racing is the most affordable form of motorsports there is, and it's also the most competitive. So for that reason, you've got to have an amazing chassis. And for me, it's Top Kart. When I'm at a race, I simply go to TopKartUSA.com, check out their chassis setup and tuning guide, and that's the secret that gets me on the podium. So when it's time for you to go racing, call up Top Kart USA. Well, a huge shout out to KW Suspension. Guys, this year you're gonna see beautiful coilovers such as this going on many of my cars, including my Porsche 944, my Dodge Viper, and even some of these crazy race cars. And the reason is simple. This is one of the best shock companies in the world. It was founded in Germany in 1992 by Klaus Wolfarth, and recently they just launched a new 1.2 million square foot robotic warehouse where they're creating unbelievably nice suspension components such as this for 15 different original equipment manufacturers. So whether you're a street enthusiast, a weekend track warrior, or you are building the Le Mans car of your dreams, guys, check out KW Suspension. Unbelievably nice shocks. So go down in the description below, patronize them. You're gonna be glad you did.